Well, joining us today is Mike McHargue. Hi, Mike.
Morning.
The problem is I always know him as Science Mike, and that's, I think, how most people know you. And Science Mike is well known for his Ask Science Mike and the Liturgists podcasts. And Mike, it's so good to have you here today. Would you welcome with me Mike McHargue? Hi. So let's just start there. Why do people call you Science Mike?
I think McHargue is so hard to say and spell that the internet needed another moniker. And it's a little misleading because you hear Science Mike and you think scientist. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I am not actually a scientist, although I did go to community college for 6 amazing weeks.
Yes.
My work instead has been about helping people who come from faith backgrounds learning to understand how science can broaden and expand our view of the world, and also to help people who come from scientific backgrounds understand what faith means to people and why it's a relevant and indeed necessary force in human society.
It's funny because science and Christianity in particular have always had a sort of dance, haven't they? There's been this to and fro where either Christianity has been like a big supporter of science. I think of the Jesuits, for example, Presbyterians, building universities, hospitals. But then sometimes it also becomes this very reactive, like, well, hey, your scientific discovery doesn't quite line up with our theological view of the world. Of course, that happened with Copernicus and Galileo, both of whom were, dedicated, Christians, but they were also great scientists. And so it's interesting, isn't it, how that happens?
Yeah, I think so often we become intimidated by science because it does make demands on how we view the world. But I think for the person of faith, it's important to understand, just like you wouldn't use a hammer to fix a leak in the sink, you want to grab the right tool for the job when you're evaluating knowledge about our world. And I see science as an incredible way to reveal the beauty and mystery of the natural world as it was created.
And just like any other faith, there's so many Christians who are sort of on a spectrum, aren't there? I mean, I remember one of the best experiences I ever had was when I was at BioLogos, which is a group of Christian scientists and theologians who get together to sort of talk about this relationship between science and theology. I remember looking in this room, it was in New York City, at the Harvard Club actually, and there was these professors of cosmology and bioscience from, Calvin, Harvard, MIT, Cambridge, and they're like raising their hands and worshiping Jesus. And it was this very interesting thing to see these respected scientists that were also deeply spiritual people and loved Jesus. And I think that's a thing that the world, you're kind of helping the world see that, aren't you? You want the world to see that.
That's my goal, honestly. I think so often this kind of cultural war between a scientific understanding of the world and people who view the world, through a lens of Christology or what Christ does in the world, we lose so much. Christians care about feeding the hungry and caring for the poor, and in fact, science can be our greatest ally in those efforts. So my goal is to help people of faith understand science better, and of course also for scientists who are like, wait, why do you go on a Sunday morning every week? To understand why that's so significant and indeed healthy for the brain.
Yeah, that's great. So you have this awesome book that just came out, Finding God in the Waves. So why did you write this book, and kind of how have you gotten here?
Well, I grew up in the church, and so as much as I loved science, I was the kid in Sunday school asking, but what about the dinosaurs on the ark, right? So, as I grew through that whole experience, at some point, I got really serious about studying the Bible and actually read it 4 times in a single year. Oh. And at the end of that process, I was an atheist.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't equipped for what I viewed as conflicts between science and Scripture. So I wrote a book for the literally millions of Americans who struggle to reconcile how science describes the world in a Christian worldview, because they so often feel alone.
Yeah.
But I also wrote the book for people who are in loving relationships with people in faith transition or doubt, so that they can better understand that journey and have better conversations and ultimately create a world that's more open for people to return to God.
I often feel bad for, it seems so unfair that there's usually, when a scientific discovery, there's usually like these early speakers from the church, a handful of pastors who oftentimes will set the tone for what a lot of believers think is the right answer, when it oftentimes is the wrong. Like, there's a lot of ironies, like the guy who discovered the Big Bang Theory is a Belgian priest, who, when he first made the discovery, was criticized. Scientists criticized the Big Bang Theory, many, because they said it was too creationistic.
Right.
And then when it was adapted, I think in the 60s, it went the other way, where they were like, haha, see, there's no God because of a Big Bang, rather than just being like, the Big Bang is the way God created the universe, or whatever, you know?
Right.
And that's the hard thing. It's the children, isn't it? When the children are given these ideas that, like, I have to choose either or, we don't really set them up well to be strong believers in Jesus if we give them those either or questions, I think.
Yeah. So I think there's this opportunity, for example, with the Big Bang. If we imagine the universe emerging from this mysterious singularity the size of a sugar cube into everything that is, what more speaks of beauty and majesty in creation than that?
And you can even see the word in DNA and things like that. You can see code, like God speaking these things into being. It's so creative and powerful. So, well, that's great. Science Mike, thank you so much. And the book is awesome. It's called Finding God in the Waves. And I really want to recommend you take a look at this book and check out the podcast too, Science Mike and the Liturgist. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate you. God bless you.